And we're back. You are chatting with John P. Today, I am going to be sharing with you a three-piece watch collection under $5,000 that will not lose value, or it will retain its value. Now, I don't look at watches as an investment. You can see it in the watches that I wear. I buy and I wear what I like, and I don't always look at watches as an investment. But I think for some people, even myself, you really just don't necessarily want to buy watches that you know you're gonna take a bath on. So I always recommend pre-owned watches, and of course, that's why we started DelReyWatch.com, where we buy, sell, trade pre-owned watches, because that's where I think there's a lot of value and a lot of great potential. So I've compiled a list, albeit a short list, of these three watches that I think are great options where you can buy all three of them just under $5,000 and be fairly safe. So regardless of the position you're in, whether you're just starting out or you're mid or end of your collecting career, these three watches are great options. So first, let's talk about the Sinn 104. Now the Sinn 104 is known by certain types of watch collectors, mostly tool watch collectors, as being a great value watch. Now, the retail price from the only US distributor for the watch is about $1,300 or $1,330 on a strap, which I think is a really great price to begin with. And the interesting thing about this watch is it retains pricing or value in the secondary or pre-owned market very close to that original retail price. So if you buy this watch maybe for $1,000, $1,100 used or pre-owned compared to new, there's not a huge difference there, which I think is pretty attractive considering the price point. Typically when we're talking about $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 watches, they sell for a few $100s pre-owned. And when you look at the specs of this watch, it really makes sense. So first, I'll mention that I recommend the white dial. It seems like at Del Rey, we receive a lot of inquiries and the white dials sell like that. So I see a higher demand for this watch with a white dial, but there's other dials out there, and there's some, limited or at least limited production versions of it as well. I believe there's a blue dial, but we'll talk about the white dial, clocking in at 41 millimeters, of course, the 103K size. It's also a pilot watch, but it also is very reminiscent of a dive watch, right? It looks very similar to a dive watch. It behaves very similar to a dive watch, especially in its category. It's a water-resistant sports watch after all, even though it's technically a pilot's watch, so you can kind of substitute this watch as a dive watch instead, because unless you're a diver, you really don't need a dive watch, right? But you do need a watch generally that's able to be worn in active situations or jump in the pool, and you certainly can with this watch, especially if you put it on a NATO or a canvas strap or a bracelet. So I really like it for that reason. And of course, it features a Sellita SW220-1 movement, which is a very common workhorse watch movement, and I'd like to see it in watches of this price point because at least you know the watch is going to be running very well and they're not cutting too many corners here. Maybe a little bit in terms of decoration, but it's as decorated as possible at that price point. And once again, the price point is $1,300 brand new or pre-owned, $1,100, maybe $1,000, sometimes a little lower if you hunt around and you find someone that wants to get it gone very quickly on the forums. So I think it's a really great all-around rugged, durable sports watch that you can dress up, dress down, put it on a rubber band or strap and have a lot of fun with and still hold value because of that delta so small between new and used. Next, we have vintage Rolex Datejust. Now, I know that there's going to be some people that have seen previous watches and videos that I've talked about in the past, and they're going to have a field day with this because I've made two videos telling people not to buy a vintage Datejust. But if you also watch my videos and you put this totally in context and not out of context, you'll also know that I've recommended Rolex Datejusts in the past as well for certain people in certain scenarios. I myself have a gold Datejust, a vintage 1601. So it's not that I hate the watch for any reason. The videos I made were really talking about reasons why people that don't like vintage watches should not buy these watches. And I think it's important to note that some people just want the cheapest Rolex, and those people do exist out there, and those videos were aimed at that person. So the reason that I'm recommending, vintage Rolex Datejust, either a 1601 or 16013 or something in those families or production years, is that you can still get them now if you hunt around at between $2,200 to, yeah, sure, $3,500, depending on condition, box and papers, all of that, and also if it has a bracelet. But these watches seem to be climbing, a few percent in value every year. So I don't think you should necessarily focus on that value increase, right? Few percent, that's basically equivalent to credit card fees. You can get better returns currently focusing on returns in the markets and options and equities and things like that. So I don't think you should look at it as an investment, but I don't think you're going to lose. And the reason I had to put a Rolex in this list is because I know, especially for newer collectors, you're always, even when I was a newer collector, I was always striving to get the Rolex, right? So even though I bought watches that were higher quality than Rolex, it's like something happens where you just need to have a Rolex in the collection. Now, that kind of mantra and mentality is not going to resonate with everyone, but I'm recommending it because it is very common, right? People buy the Omegas, they get the Breitlings, they get a Nomos, and it just doesn't scratch that itch, and it's always like, well, I don't have a Rolex in the collection. So considering it fits pretty well and it's a dress watch that you can put on something like an alligator or potentially a calf strap in a certain type of grain, and you can make it a little bit dressy, take it off that bracelet. It's versatile, but you can wear it as a dress watch. And so I think it's great when you're talking about a three-piece collection to have a versatile watch like that. In terms of the rugged, how durable it is, we're talking vintage watches here. You have to consider it's not going to be rugged and durable, but that's why we have a three-piece collection with Sinn and next to chronograph. So it's that kind of in-between category, and I think it's great. It scratches the Rolex itch. It's going to be quality. Consider it's vintage, so watch my videos where I talk about considerations and the nuances of vintage, but it does fit pretty well in a three-piece collection under $5K. Next and lastly, we have the Omega Speedmaster Reduced, or the Speedy Reduced. Now, if you look at the picture, at first glance, you might think this is a Speedmaster Professional, Omega Speedmaster Professional, the Moon Watch, right? In so many different versions and variations they have of that watch, limited edition. Omega focuses on their flagship products, and their most notable flagship product outside of the Seamaster lineup is the Omega Speedmaster, mainly because of its association with NASA and all of the moon and space things that they do and offer in their partnerships, even currently until today. But the Speedmaster Automatic, the Speedmaster Reduced, is a smaller version of the Speedmaster Pro, but it's automatic, right? So if you like that design, but the 42 millimeters, even though it wears a little bit smaller on the wrist for the professional, this automatic version, the Speedmaster Reduced, it's 39 millimeters, so it fits smaller. It's a little bit more wearable for those with a smaller wrist, and you can also have a lot of fun with it because it doesn't break the bank. Now, I've seen these things traded as low as $1,000 in not great condition on eBay and places like that. Trust me, I know there's people out there that will leave a comment and say, I cannot find it for $1,000. You're not going to. You're going to have to hunt for it. It's going to be very difficult. But I have seen it, especially from Japan. But the average prices on these things are maybe $1,600, $1,700, with the higher end being $2,500 when you start getting into box and paper. So when you look at, kind of the aggregate of this three-piece collection, you can get it under $5K, but, if you're buying the most expensive example of all of them, it's not going to be $5K, right? It's just the facts. It's just pretty obvious there. So hunt around and, kind of mix and match there where you feel comfortable. But when talking about the Speedmaster Automatic Reduced, I love it because it has that same style and function. It's a chronograph. It's also automatic, so you don't have to worry about winding it. The Speedy Pro, while it's iconic and it's true in its natural form, it's a manual wind watch. This is automatic, so you don't have to worry about that. A newer collector might not want to have to wind the watch every day, or maybe those that want to wear the watch every day, you do not have to worry about that either. The most recent version of this watch has a 2892 movement. Basically, Omega has a caliber name on top of it called the 3220. Basically, they just popped a module on top of this called the Dubois de Praz module, and this is a cheaper way for manufacturers to really produce and offer chronographs by just taking another movement and putting a module on it. All manufacturers, well, not all manufacturers, but most brands have been guilty of this in the past, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a little bit more difficult for a watchmaker to service, but not by leaps and bounds. We're talking about a little bit more to service, a little bit more in terms of time, but it's not a big deal, and it allows the watch to be a lot more affordable than if it was integrated, right? If it was more integrated, it's a unique movement, then it's just less difficult to service, but at the same time, it's more expensive to produce because it's all integrated and they're not just popping an extra thing on to make something else. But all in all, a watch like this, I think it's a great value. I've owned them. You can get some very attractive examples currently because this is in that vintage / transitional period, almost retro to be, some might consider it. So you do have the lume kind of turning a very nice pumpkin color, which I think really looks nice on a watch that's supposed to be modern, but now is becoming vintage, and it's creating this really weird area of the vintage modern watch spectrum. You know, look around, type pumpkin lume Spymaster automatic or Spymaster reduced. You'll find so many great examples. I don't know that we currently have one at Delray Watch, but we've certainly had so many of them in the past. So what do you guys think about these 3 watches under $5,000 total that make up a great collection? I personally, of course, think they're all very great. I've owned them all in the past, with the exception of the Sinn, but we've handled so many here at DelrayWatch.com that I'm liking it more and more every time I get one across my desk. But what do you think about this? What is your ideal collection or 3-piece collection? I would love to know. Please do not forget to thumbs up, like, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. You can check out DelrayWatch.com, where, full disclosure, we might have some of these things, but we might not. Things are moving so quickly. And also, if you're interested in becoming a watch dealer, you can follow the link in the description below where I teach you exactly how and what we do at DelrayWatch.com. Thanks, guys. You've been chatting with John P. Ciao.